I was always into games that featured their own art style. I always felt like it gave themselves their own unique identity and stand amongst themselves from the rest. But trust me, just the art style alone in Guilty Gear does not make this game stand out. This game features a very colorful cast of characters, all with their own unique weapons, and a bunch of weird weapons. Just listen to these. To start off with, you got my main chick, Melia Rage, who fights with her hair, a dude from the Illuminati who fights with a pool cue, an insane lunatic doctor who fights with a giant ass scalpel, a little girl that can fight with an anchor like it's nothing, a chick that fights with two consciences and sometimes occasionally will throw a slug out of her ass. But the weirdest fighter of them all is the blonde dude with the sword. That is just too unrealistic for me to handle. But enough about the art style and the quirkiness and all the characters and stuff like that. How's the fighting engine? That's pretty much the core of any 2D or 3D fighting game. And to sum it up in one word, it's great. It works pretty well. If you've played any of the other 2D fighting games such as Street Fighter, King of Fighters, and a few others that are out there that I can't recall at the moment, you'll probably feel at home with this game. However, this game is a little bit quicker on the draw and a little bit air dash happy, so it's a bit more similar to BlazBlue, which were pretty much made by the same developers anyways. Now the fighting game pretty much works like this. You have 4 different types of attacks. You have punch, kick, slash, and high slash if I'm correct. Pressing certain buttons at the same time will result in stronger attacks, but to really do the super moves you have to use the directional pads, so pretty much your quarter circle, half circle, and all that stuff. So that's why I compare this to Street Fighter and King of Fighters, because they do feel very similar in that regard. And similar to King of Fighters and Street Fighter, you have a super meter on the bottom. It's pretty much called tension here, and from this you are able to execute super moves. One more thing I would like to talk about the fighting game engine is the instant kills. This happens when you fill up your attention bar to a certain way, press all the buttons at once, and execute a move to kill your opponent and automatically win the round. These honestly aren't very important in the regular matches, but they are essential and integral to story mode. So the next thing I would like to talk about is the story mode. Now each character has 3 different paths that they can go from. The only way to get to the other paths is to do certain actions, such as no continues, or the most importantly, insta killing some people at certain times. Now the cutscenes in this game are done in this anime style. Don't really know what the hell to call it honestly, but pretty much when somebody's talking it shows you the picture and they talk a little bit. The voiceovers are okay. Nothing really Empire Earth 3 bad, but nothing great as well. Now story mode is very interesting in terms of the multiple paths, but it has many fatal flaws. One flaw is the fact that you don't really know when you're supposed to insta kill certain people, and the second flaw is even if you do know when you're supposed to, you can't do it yet unless you complete somebody else's story mode as a prerequisite. For example, the only way to reach the boss version of Ino in Melia Rage's story mode is to beat Soul Bad Guy's first path. Now it's easy to find out nowadays if you just go to GameFAQs or just search it on Google, but back in the day it was very difficult and I wonder how people found out. Now since this is a fighting game, you do have the arcade mode, and it's pretty cool. After you beat a character you get a little win quote, and it's specific depending on which character you beat. Both the arcade mode and the story mode have this problem. Once you get to the end, it gets really hard, insanely cheap, and 90% of the time you will lose. What makes no sense is to get to the end is actually fairly easy, but to actually complete the game in story or especially in arcade mode is very challenging. There is a huge difficulty spike at the end, and it really throws any strategy out the window that you had. Ino is easily one of the cheapest bosses in video game history. Now for the other modes, I'll go through them very quickly. You have mission mode, which you have to perform a certain task, whether it be attack from a certain way or use special moves or something like that in order to beat the mission, which these are fairly easy. You got a survival mode, which is pretty much you trying to last as long as you can, But the thing here is that there's this thing called survival level. Depending on how well you perform, the higher it goes. When it reaches up to level 20, you face a daredevil. You got MOM mode, mind over matter mode, or mom mode, whatever you want to call it. It's pretty much like survival mode, except that when you attack enemies, there's these medals that come out, and eventually health comes out in order to replenish it throughout the matches. Overall, all these modes are pretty satisfactory. None of them really stand out into mind, possibly the story mode. But other than that, there's nothing really crazy about the replay value. But if you are interested in this game, it will hold you over for a while. There's also a gallery mode where you get to check the videos and the endings that you received, so that's pretty cool. So before I give the final score, the last thing I would like to talk about is what we started out with, the combat engine. Now honestly, I had a lot of fun with this game, and I do like the combat. I love how fast it moves. However, I feel like the game is a bit too offensive focused, because since it's so fast paced and so sporadic in like how quick it is, you can't really slow down, because if you slow down, you're pretty much done. Pretty much what I'm trying to say is offensive play is favored way too heavily off of defensive play. If you guard, you're taking damage, so it's best to dodge rather than to sit and just block. But then again, if you try to jump or dash in the air, you leave yourself open to counterattacks. Either way, my final score for this game is a 7 out of 10. There is a lot to like about this game, and it is a nice little package, but there are just a few things that really hold this game back. Just mainly how cheap the game gets, especially when you get to the end boss, is just completely unfair in my book. If they did a better job making it more balanced in terms of offense and defense, and also making it a challenge throughout the game instead of just at the end, it would be a much better game entirely. I'd recommend this game to 2D fighting fans, and if you have played 3D fighting games and want to get into a 2D fighting game, this might be a game you're interested in, but for everyone else it's a little hard to recommend to you. But either way, I hope you enjoyed this review. This is Pow3rh0use signing off.